Pretty sad. And I think it's a good, you can kind of see those risk factors involved. One of the big ones that you heard there at the end too was the alcoholism, right? Drinking alcohol made him impulsive. But another thing too is if you ever have to deal with people that are, you heard me say, if someone says they want to kill themselves, you should take those things pretty seriously. Take those things seriously and ask that person. Keep asking questions to that person. Sometimes I think one of the views is that if I ask them about suicide, if I talk about suicide with my friends or someone that's dealing with it, it'll give them ideas, and that's not true. It'll bring people that are suffering from suicide thoughts, suicide ideation, want to talk about it. They want to make sure that they're not alone, and they want to know that people care about them. So if you have anybody talk about those things, bring it up, talk to them about it, and tell someone that you trust, an adult, more than anybody. Let them know, and they'll address those issues from there. Okay. Now let's talk about protective factors. So things a little more uplifting things. Okay. So what are some things that protect people from suicide? And these are I would say the scientific things that are in the literature. I'm going to talk more philosophical here in a little bit, but these are what science is saying. So effective clinical care for mental, physical, and substance abuse disorders. So treating those disorders, treating those mental illnesses can help to protect you against suicide. Easy access to a variety of clinical interventions and support for help seeking. Okay, so easy access to clinical interventions, treatment, things like that. Family and community support. Support from ongoing medical and mental health care relationships, so good health care and good relationships with your doctor. Okay, skills in problem solving, conflict resolution, and nonviolent ways of handling disputes. And then cultural and religious beliefs that discourage suicide and support instincts for self-preservation. So a lot of these, religion is a big part of, and one of the big protective factors in suicide research, because it discourages suicide by saying, most religions do at least, discourage suicide by saying that, if you commit suicide, you're not going on and, living happily ever after. There's a result to committing suicide that doesn't get better from that point. So it discourages it that way. And then also I think it addresses another issue when you talk about, and we're going to get into this, we're going to talk about what other things are involved. It gives meaning to a lot of people's lives. Okay? So religion and culture, things like that, family, all these types of things, when they address meaning in life, it provides some kind of protective factor against suicide. All right. Oh, let's go back. So what can we do right now to protect ourselves from suicide? And this is going to be like a general sense of thinking. What kind of thoughts can you have? What kind of ways can you approach life that protect you from these things before they happen? So a lot of the protective factors you looked at were protective factors that when people are dealing with a situation, they go get clinical interventions, right? Let's try to address, my thinking is, let's try to address the issue here and now. Let's start trying to think a different way between ourselves, interpersonally, between our friends and our family members, so that we can address this before it even happens. So you can protect yourself, you can create a protection, a barrier before anything happens. And you never even think about hopelessness. You never think about ending your life. Okay? Hold on. Okay. Yeah.
I'll take my smart card off, and then you can just hit a single button.
Okay. No problem. The first thing we got to think about, I think, is, first of all, what are we as human beings? What are we?
Tissue.
Tissue. That's it, huh?
Yeah.
Just tissue. Well, if you can't tell, I disagree with that. That we're just tissue. Okay? We are tissue. We are those things. We are body. Absolutely. But we also are our minds, our thoughts, our values, our beliefs. All those things affect our behavior. All those things are...
It's a single now.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. So all these things affect our behavior. Our behavior isn't, outside of our control. We aren't just mindlessly doing things. We do things because of the things we value, our motivations, our thoughts. Our thoughts are a catalyst to our actions, our behaviors. So one of the things, a book I read, it's an incredible book when I was first getting into psychology, first kind of trying to, figure out a philosophy for my own life, and I did this at a later age, and I wish I would have started doing this in high school, like what you guys are doing. All right? There was a book I read. It's called "What to Say When You Talk to Yourself." How many of us, when we experience setback and failure, there's always an inner dialogue that we're having with ourselves. Always. You're always reacting to things outside the world and then talking to yourself about them. Everybody knows this. It's something that they don't study in psychology, so that's why we're going to talk philosophically here. Okay? We don't talk much about inner talk in psychology. All right? It's hard to measure. How do you know what people are doing, talking to themselves? All right? But there's always this inner dialogue we have with ourselves. And how many times when you have a setback and a failure, you say you're an idiot, you're stupid, I'm dumb, I'm ugly, all these things, right? How often do you do that? You do that all the time. Some of us do it unconsciously. And some of it is due to what other people have told you. Other people tell you things and you start believing them yourselves. It's this constant battle between the outside world and yourself. Okay? So one of the things that you can start doing right now, right here, start taking note when you make a mistake, when you have a setback, the way you talk to yourself. Do you encourage yourself or do you beat yourself down? Do you lift yourself up or you try to destroy yourself? And little by little, if you keep destroying yourself and you keep messing with yourself and tell yourself that you're not great, you're not good, you start to believe it and you start to dislike who you are. Okay? So start right now understanding there's a connection between your thoughts and your beliefs about yourself and then your actions and your experiences and your behaviors. Okay? So we have to know who we are. We're both mind and body. We're not just tissue. I disagree. Okay? All right. Another big thing is search for meaning. This is something that human beings have done from the beginning of time. It's what separates us from all other creatures on earth right now, is that we look for meaning. And you can see this, and it's just right there in front of you when you see like little children, right, that are first starting to talk. What is the question? First of all, my shoes are so squeaky right now. All right, but what is maybe that's what I mean. But
or are those the boots from SpongeBob?
Come on,
Oh
man.
my God.
I'm just kidding. I do like SpongeBob. I'm probably a sweat. All right, but anyways, so you can see this in children. The search for meaning. What is the question that children ask right away? You all did it. You all drove your parents nuts.
Why?
Why? And it's innate in who we are. This search for why. What is the meaning of doing this? Why do I have to do that? What does that mean? Why? You're telling me I have to do this. Why do I have to do it? You're searching for meaning, and you can't control it. It's part of who you are. So if you go through life and you don't search for meaning, you think you figured it out. You don't search for meaning in your relationships. You don't search for meaning in what kind of job you want or what kind of love. All these things. If you don't search for meaning, you don't try to gather meaning, you're denying what you are as a human being, and that can lead you on the wrong road. You can look at, first of all, you can also find the meaning. You can be a little shallow in your meaning. You look at people like you see celebrities all the time that you think have everything, right? A guy like Robin Williams, who I love Robin Williams. Everybody knows who Robin Williams is, I think. Okay? And what's shocking is that if anybody's seen Good Will Hunting, he plays the psychiatrist that helps Matt Damon figure out his life and all stuff. But in real life, Robin Williams ended up committing suicide. And you wonder why these people that have all these things, you think they have everything. They have money, fame, fortune, all that stuff, right? And then they end up not wanting to live. Why is that? It's because something is off in their meaning. They're what they believe the world to be, what they believe life to be. Where they value things. Okay? Their meaning is off. Right? And I read this book about, and we're going to get into the next thing. Let me click it right here. All right, another thing you want to look for is purpose. So I read this book, and I was trying to come across ideas on meaning, like gathering meaning in my life and studying suicide. By studying suicide, it's a negative topic, but when you study it, you kind of see what kind of things are important in your own life and what are things you should value. Okay? And purpose is a big one. And there's this book, it's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it's about a psychiatrist during World War II, a Jewish psychiatrist. who was imprisoned in a Nazi internment camp, right? A Nazi concentration camp. And he studied the inmates. He was an inmate himself, right? He was someone who was experiencing all these hardships. And it's a good way to look at things, because if you look at something as extreme as those concentration camps and then apply it to your own life a little bit, you can I think most of us can say that we're never going to experience suffering like people from in a concentration camp. Most of us aren't going to experience suffering like that. So our own sufferings, puts our own sufferings in perspective, right? That there is some suffering out there that people have experienced and overcome, and that's what this book is about, overcoming that suffering, okay? It gives us hope, gives us a realization that we can do something with our own suffering that is not the magnitude of a concentration camp. But anyways, what Dr. Viktor Frankl, that's his name, he studied the inmates, and what he found was that inmates and the prisoners who were experiencing all this hardship, first of all, they all basically felt the same thing. They all felt, at some point they felt apathy, and they were detached emotionally from all the terrible things that were going on. But what he found is that some people remained hopeful and some people didn't. And the reason he said people remained hopeful was that certain people within the camp found purpose in their life. They held on to some kind of purpose. For Dr. Viktor Frankl, when he arrived at the concentration camps, they took his manuscript, his scientific manuscript, where he had written down all his ideas. And so his purpose became to survive, so that at some point he could write a manuscript again and get that information out, get his psychology out there. So he had purpose, and so if you take that as an example, you guys are all at this point in your lives right now where you're trying to figure out your purpose. That's what schooling really is. We're educating you. You're getting educated so that you can go out into the world and you can find purpose. You can find a job. You're educated. You can find relationships. You can do all types of stuff, right? You're trying to find purpose. So that's the next step. Find purpose. Look for purpose in your life. Start doing it right now. Start thinking of what is your purpose? What things am I good at right now, so that I can eventually find what I want to do. I've already found meaning in my life. I found what motivates me, what drives me, and let me find my purpose. I have this. There's a psychologist that I loved. There's a clinical psychologist, Dr. Jordan Peterson, that I love. And he talks about how he has patients that come in that are depressed all the time. And one of the things most of them share in common is they'll ask him, what are you doing? Are you working? And most of the time, individuals say, no, I'm so depressed I can't work. And the first thing he'll tell them to do is to go find a job, go find some sort of purpose, go find some direction first, and then come and let's talk. And then we'll continue to talk and do therapy, but find that direction, find that purpose. So make sure that you guys are looking and searching for purpose in your lives. And this is going to lead me finally to hope. Okay. We always have to have hope. And if you do these things, you know who you are, you know what you are, you build yourself up, you encourage yourself, right? You find meaning in the things you do, the relationships that you're in, the music that you listen to, right? The movies that you watch. And I know it's hard to find, I know the music y'all listen to, my goodness. It's hard to find good music that, has meaning in brings meaning to your life, okay? Find music, find movies, find relationships, friendships, find careers that bring meaning and purpose to your life. And what that'll do is that'll bring you hope. You'll always know, you'll have something to fall back on that will keep giving you hope and help you rise up. Because the one thing we all have in common and that we all share, even though we're all different and the world is complex, the one thing we all share in common is that we all are going to suffer at some point. We're all going to be hit with some setback. There's no escaping it. I had a friend one time that we were talking about this, and he said, what is the one thing we all share in common? One thing that we all experience. And naively, I said, love. That's the one thing. He goes, no, it's not love. Some people don't experience love, don't perceive love sometimes. We all experience suffering. That's the one thing we experience. There's one thing we share. And Dr. Viktor Frankl even says that you can find purpose in your suffering. You can use suffering to bring you hope. You can use suffering as a way to overcome. It makes you better, it makes you stronger. How can you know yourself without experiencing suffering and overcoming that? So always keep hope. Always keep hope. Keep hope in your relationships with your friends. So when you hear your friends, that's one of the things I've noticed. You hear your friends talk about themselves, and you'll hear them talk about it and say, "I'm stupid. I'm dumb." You know, encourage them. Have them. Although they may be speaking to themselves wrong, right? We talk about that speaking, that inner speak. You know, that outer speak can have an effect. What you say to someone. That's why bullying is such a big deal, right? You bully someone enough, they start believing what's going on. So change that within yourselves first. Inner speak yourself, and then pass that on. Because although suicide has this effect, right? Hopelessness has this effect where someone ends their life and it affects the community and relationships and their friends, their family. You know, the best way I think to make a change in this world is to pass on the hope, pass on those little things, tell your friends something nice. You know, they're dogging themselves. You know, you say something to counteract that. Start here and now. You know, Mother Teresa had a quote that says, "Don't wait for leaders. Do it yourself, person to person." Okay? Don't expect someone to come in and save you, save your friends, and save everybody from suicide and all these thoughts. Do it yourself. Start with yourself. Pass it on. Okay, and I guess that's where I'm going to end with that. And so, if you guys have any questions, one thing I do want to say is
We have 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, one thing I do want to say: if you guys heard my phone go off, what that was, every time that went off, someone passed away from suicide today. Every time. So, if you're looking to get into a career field, if you're looking to do something to counteract this problem that's going on right now, you know, this is a good career to choose. And then personally, I know I said I do experimental psychology and all that stuff, and I do research, but I also want to do clinical psychology. And if you study clinical psychology, it's where you really get down person to person and address this issue. So I hope that you guys are taking this class and learning, and I hope that at some point you guys want to join the career. So I guess that's it. Thank you guys for having me. Does anybody have any questions or anything?